Hello there everyone, and welcome back to another uniform and equipments video. This time around this is gonna be more of a follow-up on the previous video, and we're gonna continue talking about the 1914 manual for the Swedish soldier. Last time around we went through the early chapters, which talk a lot about duty and then also gave inspirational stories. A lot of these stories, though, boiled down to if you don't fear death, you'll push death into the ranks of the enemy. Paraphrasing there a Napoleonic quote, I believe, or it's applied to Napoleon. So it was a lot of these sort of almost foolish acts of, moving in towards the enemy, and he who dares wins, basically. That was what all the stories boiled down to, which seems rather foolhardily, and you can kind of notice then that it is the before this book is done before the horrors of World War I are fully known, as it is the 1914. And a lot of you brought up that a lot of these stories seemed a little bit reckless to apply to the troops before World War I. But obviously they probably didn't know the level of horror that would come. So I sort of myself brought up that I wonder what a later edition of this would look like, knowing then what was going on during World War I. And so I did actually find one. So this is the same book, however this is the 1920 version. It was however put together in, I think it says inside, 1918, so just at the end of World War I. First and foremost, you might note that it is a lot smaller than this one, so they've cut out a lot of the information, and wouldn't you know it, if you start to go through here, you still have the old kings. We have first king Gustav Vasa, or first of modern Sweden, and Gustav Adolphus, of course, Charles X, maybe not known that internationally, but he's definitely known in Sweden and Denmark. And then, of course, Charles XII. And here is where it really should start talking about the bravery stories, or at least that's what happens in the 1914 version. But it's gone. It is completely dropped. Instead, it talks about the conscription and the importance of defense. And a few new other interesting notes about this is that it adds, let's see if I can find it. So it goes through a little bit about talking about the other departments of the army, so like artillery, the navy and stuff, and it also now in the 1920 version brings up the Air Force, although not the Air Force, because the Air Force didn't come around until 1926, but we're starting to experiment with aircraft, and here you have showings of how you're supposed to be able to spot that it is a Swedish aircraft and not to be fired upon. And then it also has a little bit further in here, it talks about flamethrowers, hand grenades, and mortars. And a little bit earlier here, we also have a diagram of a trench. I'm hoping I'm getting this right in the camera. So with that, let's go on to answer a few more questions that were brought up. So with that answered, let's go ahead and get into the next question, which is the one that I always get, which is I always get questions regarding the rifle that I'm carrying. This time around, someone said, that looks rather short. And yes, it is short. I use this airsoft rifle to both my impression of the Swedish World War I soldier and the German one, because it is a Mauser and it does have this straight bolt that goes out right like that. However, it's neither Swedish nor German. It is in fact Chinese. You can see the Kuomintang symbol right there. So it's actually the Chiang Kai-shek Mauser. It's really, I mean, it's low effort. But the thing is, to try and get something that actually looks more like what they actually would have used have turned out to be a little bit harder than I thought. So this was the best I could get with the amount of effort that I've put in so far. So really it comes down to the fact that it does have the straight bolt. It doesn't have exactly the same stock as the K98. And it does actually fit my World War I bayonet here on the end. But it is quite a bit short. I wonder perhaps I could lengthen it to make it look a little bit more like what I'm going for, which in this case is a mix of the Swedish and the German World War I Mauser. But there we have that, so that's out of the way. Oh yeah, I should say, this was purchased quite a while ago, so as far as I know, this airsoft version is no longer available. I think at the time when I bought this, I bought like one of the last that was still available. So unfortunately, I cannot link you where you can purchase that. With that out of the way, let's jump to the next question. And now for today's sponsor, Pervitin. Pervitin for the soldier on the go. When you need that little bit of extra energy, you look at none other than Pervitin. I've got right here 2 of these army-sized bottles. We've got 12 tablets. I'm gonna pop one right away. We go, we get one there. Wonderful. Can already feel the energy surging through my veins. And we got this nice little sleek package for the civilian. Perhaps good for Mother's Day or for anyone else that you love. 30 tablets in this wonderful little sleek. Fits right into your pocket. Wonderful. And obviously this might have some side effects if you want to read that. We don't really care about that. But the recommended use is 1 to 3 tablets. Unless you finish, because then you can down the entire thing. And wait a minute. Is that a murder squirrel? For this next question, we're answering a question that wasn't actually posted on the last video, but instead I think it was posted on one of my shorts, and it comes down, it is related though, and it's related to the ammo. How much ammo would a Swedish soldier carry in their ammo pouches, in the bandolier here, that's where it carried around the waist? So I didn't know, but I did have the manual, and it should perhaps say how much you're supposed to carry. So flipping through, there's a table that shows all the equipment. When I did it in the earlier take, I just immediately flipped it open. Now it doesn't want to play ball with me. There we go. Right, so when it comes to the different types of things you need to carry with you we've got here. So we've got ammo, ammunition, rifle cartridges, 100. However, are you supposed to carry 100 within a pouch, or are some of that reserve? So we go to the next page and we find this. It's a tiny little sentence. Cartridges carries in the ammunition bandolier. I don't know if that's correctly translated, but and that's all it says. So they're supposed to carry 100 rounds, and it's supposed to be carried in the bandoliers. We've got 5 pouches, which means that you need to fit 20 rounds, 4 of these stripper clips, into 1 pouch. Now right now they're quite flattened. So actually what I've got, as you can see, I've got 2, which probably I should have shown earlier. So I've got the 2 different versions. So this one would actually be more in line with the 1910 uniform, because this is the early version of how they made it. And if I bring them up close, you can see that there's a lot more work put into this older one. You've got stitching here, while in this one it's just cut straight through. You've got more stitchings on the side, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot more work put into this one. This one, obviously, you can make more and probably just as sturdy. One thing this one has, actually, that this newer one, there's World War II around there. What it does have is back here on the strap. Let's see if you can see this. It actually has sewn in on the back here of just this piece of leather. So what do you think that's for? Well, I assume that it is for the bayonet. So the bayonet is carried like this. This is the bayonet. So just carried like this. And you can imagine that if this just sits on the belt, it's going to slide back and forth. However, if we now, let's see if I can do this. Awkward, can slip this through. If I slip this through all the way through here and then back, then this makes it so it doesn't slip back. This would obviously be pushed then against the uniform. So now it cannot slip away that side. It can still move, I guess, a little bit forward, but that doesn't matter that much. So anyways, there's that. Back to the question at hand though. Are we going to be able to fit 5 stripper clips into this pouch? Well, first I guess we'll need to open it. And then I think we'll have to make it as wide as possible. Let's see how well you see this. And now it's opened up quite a bit. So we're going to put 1 in there, 2, 3, and 4. So it's one thing, there we go. There's one thing to put them inside. Can we close it now in a comfortable manner? Let's see if I can pull this through. Trying to look through the camera in this awkward position while doing it. Come on, slip it on. There we go. Oh, it still wants to do that immediately. It still wants to do that. But there we go. It looks a little bit crowded. I mean, they're in. They're not coming out, but it looks a little bit crowded. But as far as the manual goes, this is how you would carry it, so that you can carry 100 rounds. I wonder if this is going to be quite heavy, since this is just suspended around your waist. These here are for the back. These snap onto the backpack. So if you're not carrying the backpack, you're not relieving any of the weight from the waist onto your shoulders. For comparisons, I also brought the German ones. This one's a little harder to open, and it actually went quite easy when I said that. It's got a divider in the middle, so the Germans, they would have only carried 2 stripper clips in each pouch. So they would have carried 60 ammo on their person. Oh. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. Right. So now we're loaded up 2 pouches. Wonderful. So according to the manual, yes, you carry 100 rounds and you carry it like that. I don't know if you would. Then there's the question of maybe would you need 100? It looks a little bit crowded. Perhaps it would do just as well with 2 or perhaps 3. But you can clearly have 4 of them in the patch. And then for the last question here, another one that we get asked a lot. Unfortunately for repeat viewers, you get to watch me answer these questions over and over again, but I think it's just as well to repeat these. So the question in question was, why didn't Sweden have steel helmets in 1914? And the answer is quite simple, because no one else was. And so it would be quite odd if Sweden would be the first one to introduce steel helmets, especially since Sweden at that point hadn't been at war for over 100 years. So it would be rather odd that in that sense that we would sort of clairvoyantly be able to anticipate the need of steel helmets in the carnage of World War I. Another way this is often framed is why were Sweden still wearing tricorns in 1914 or 1910 as the uniform was introduced? And that sort of implies that we never decommissioned tricorn hats, that we kept the tricorn fashion throughout, which is not the case. We went ahead and followed the military fashion just like the other European nations. So we would have had the shako during the Napoleonic Wars, and then later on in the 1800s we would switch over to a kepi style that was popular then, and so on. It isn't until we get until 1910, then just before World War I, that the new uniform that is introduced with this tricorn hat, which is really a callback to the Great Northern War and the great warrior king Charles XII. And similarly to how the book talks a lot about the old victories and the old warrior spirits and so on, it's really a callback to that. It would have been interesting if someone had, at least perhaps as an idea, to why don't we do Gustav Adolphus instead, and they would have those floppy hats with one brim turned up and some feathers. That would have been really out of place. But yeah, that's why they had a tricorn hat. Should be said here again, the 3 crowns to symbolize the army, and then the 4 here is actually company marking rather than regimental. I sometimes see in listing on these hats that it's set as a regiment, like it's the regimental marking, but it is the company marking, depending on which company the soldier was in. And I mean, it's funny to look at this and think, oh, what a silly hat. But in terms of reintroducing old fashion to sort of go back to a more patriotic time, we only have to look at today. The American army, I believe, it's just the army, it's not the other branches, I think. They reintroduced the uniform that I don't know if it's a reintroduction, but it very much looks and style of the World War II uniform. So in that sense, you know, old people back in the day, they were so silly. I mean, this is happening right now, reintroduction of sort of old fashion. And in terms of silly hats, for the time, they weren't that out of place compared to this leather helmet with a big brass spike, or yeah, brass. Is it brass? I'm trying to translate in my head. Big brass spike on top. I mean, now I've got the cover on, and I've been too lazy to pull it off. Perhaps I should actually pull it off, so you get to see what it looks like. I mean, this thing is very much a sort of, you know, come and shoot me, where you've got all these brass details gleaming in the sun on your head with a big spike on top to really, like, I do love this style. But I mean, in terms of, if we're talking about unpractical army hats, wearing this is pretty unpractical. Unpractical. With that also, I sometimes see people saying that this is supposed to, like, protect against cavalry blows, or like it's supposed to deflect cavalry blows, and that's on, I think that's on the same level as the sort of the myth that the British wore red because you wouldn't see the blood on the uniform. It's on that level. Like, if you don't think about it for a second and just like, oh yeah, that might be, then I mean, maybe then, if you don't have anything in your brain, then maybe that might make sense. But if you think about someone coming thundering at you on 1/2 ton of horse, lifting up this massive saber up high in the sky and then come bringing it down, this decorative piece isn't gonna do anything. Perhaps you will have a crumple zone similar to cars, that they have, you know, they deform like an accordion in a sort of in a protective manner, and that, you know, technically there is more material in between the sword and your head than it is in this thing. But the idea that this is supposed to protect against that, this flimsy bit of it is, I would say this. So this gives you 1 armor point in protection. I might be generous and say this one gives you 5. And we'll say a steel helmet probably gives you, like, I don't know, 50 or something. So it does, I mean, it does not protect. I think that's silly when people start talking about that. And since we're talking about steel helmet, we might as well show the helmets that eventually was adopted. We have 2 versions. This one wasn't very popular because it sort of slid back and forth on the top of the head. You still have a little bit of this sort of unpractical fashion. Obviously this is nowhere near the two others with, you know, bright brass pieces and stuff like that. But yeah, this one wasn't very popular. It's got a wide brim. It sort of slid around on your head. Wasn't very popular. This one, a little bit better, but this one also soon gave way to another helmet that was introduced shortly after. But this sort of style of helmet was kept for a very long time, or this very simple design was kept for the Swedish helmets for a very long time. And just because I can, we'll show the German World War I helmet as well. Show the auction house as well, do a commercial for that. Sweden did have, I saw someone ask if the helmets were inspired by the French Adrian, and I'm guessing because of this sort of this slight comb, but as far as I know, that's not the case. Why this slight sort of comb that's going through here, why that is there. Instead, what I've seen is the very early helmet trials. They have, then the helmet looks very much more like the German one, and it also has these helmet lugs where you can fit the extra protective Panzer plate at the front there. If they were inspired by that, or it was just similar to what the other nations did, they went back and looked at medieval helmets to get inspiration for their helmet designs. And with that, I think we've exhausted all of the questions. If you have any more, post them down below, because otherwise I am going to say, like I always say, hopefully you guys enjoy this, and hopefully I'll see you guys for the next one. Bye.